Undercover CEO found a new cashier. Crying in the break room. What she said next shattered his heart. Under the dim yellow light of the break room, Ethan paused at the doorway. A soft hum from the soda machine filled the silence, but it was the sound of muffled crying that froze him. On the worn couch near the lockers, a young woman sat hunched over, arms wrapped around herself. Her blonde hair clung to her damp cheeks, catching the light like threads of gold dulled by sorrow. He took a careful step in. "Why are you crying in here all by yourself?" he asked, voice low, gentle. The woman jerked upright, startled. She wiped her eyes quickly but didn't look at him. Her voice was steady, though tired. "If you just lost your mom and still had to smile at customers, you'd cry too." Ethan stopped short. He hadn't expected that. He'd come in for a bottle of water, not to walk into someone else's grief. The weight in her words hit him in the chest. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She shook her head, brushing off the apology. She leaned back, eyes dry now but distant. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, name tag crooked. "Lisa." Ethan looked toward the mini-fridge but didn't move. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full of things unspoken. Normally he'd give people space, but not this time. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering his name like an olive branch. Lisa glanced at him, really seeing him now, assessing, judging whether he was just another person who'd forget her tears within minutes. After a pause, she said, "Lisa." He wanted to say more, to offer something. "Do you want to be alone?" he asked instead. She gave a half shrug. "Doesn't matter. I've got 5 minutes left." He glanced at the clock. She was right. In a few minutes she'd be back at her register, scanning groceries, pretending her world hadn't just collapsed. He sat on the bench across from her. "I didn't mean to intrude. I get it. About losing someone." Lisa looked at him, surprised but stayed quiet. "It's hard to explain to people who haven't gone through it," he said. "They expect you to cry quietly, take a day off, then get back to it like you're fixed." Lisa let out a bitter laugh. "Exactly." He nodded. "They move on. They think you have too." For a moment, she seemed like she might say something, but instead she stared at the floor, foot tapping lightly, counting down the time until she had to wear the mask again. Ethan watched her. There was something in her silence, something strong. He'd known grief, he'd seen it in the mirror, but hers was different, fresh, raw, and quietly unyielding. She's the kind who breaks in silence, he thought, but still shows up. As he stood to leave, he paused. "If you ever want to talk," he said, "or not talk, I'm around." Lisa didn't respond, but as he turned to go, he noticed her eyes follow him. Just for a second. Not with curiosity, not with suspicion, just recognition. The kind one soldier gives another across a battlefield. He stepped back into the store's bright lights, heart a little heavier, mind still replaying her voice. It wasn't just her sadness that stayed with him. It was the strength it took to carry it that quietly. At 35, Ethan Hale was a name well known in the retail world. He was the founder and CEO of Ethan Mart, a grocery chain that had grown rapidly over the past decade, but few knew why he had started it. Ethan's vision had been born from loss, the death of his mother, and a hope that he could create something better for people like her. Elaine Hale had been a single mother and cashier, working late shifts and coming home exhausted, but never failing to smile as she tucked Ethan into bed. She taught him that kindness was not optional, it was a way of life. She never lived to see his success, but Ethan had promised that her sacrifices wouldn't be in vain. When he opened the first Ethan Mart at 25, it wasn't just about groceries, it was about dignity. He made sure employees had paid sick days, flexible shifts, and break rooms with real couches and coffee, not just vending machines. And it worked. The company grew, and for a while so did the heart behind it. But something shifted as the business expanded. More stores, more executives, more investors. Ethan began to notice things. Store reports looked strong, but employee turnover climbed. Managers talked in numbers, not names. Words like efficiency and cost control replaced respect and well-being. Then came the letter, left anonymously on his desk. It was blunt but honest. A longtime store manager described a workplace drained of its original values. Burnout, pressure, fear. "You started something good," the letter read, "but we don't feel it anymore. You built this company with heart, but it feels like the heart is gone." Ethan read it 3 times. That night, he didn't sleep. He remembered being a boy, watching his mother cry in the kitchen after getting scolded for giving a sandwich to a hungry man. He had promised himself then, "If I ever run something, no one will be punished for being kind." Now, sitting in a high-rise office with a view of the skyline, he wondered if he had broken that promise. The decision came quickly, but not out of impulse. It was necessary. If he wanted the truth, he couldn't find it behind a mahogany desk in a tailored suit. He had to return to the floor, to the people. He would go undercover. No press, no assistants, just Ethan, stripped of his title, working as a regular employee. He chose a store far from headquarters, Store 48, a quiet suburban location where no one knew him. There, he applied under the name Ethan J. and started at the bottom. Stock associate. Back room. Night shifts. His job was simple: unload pallets, scrub floors, and take out trash. So, on a cold Wednesday evening, Ethan found himself pushing a mop down the back aisle, sweat gathering at his collar, arms sore from lifting crates of bottled water. Customers passed him by. Employees offered polite nods. No one knew, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt grounded. There was no corner office, no buffer, just him, face to face with the very culture he had created, or perhaps lost. He wiped his hands on a towel, looking down the long row of shelves. "I made a promise," he murmured, "and I need to know if I broke it." The night shifts at Store 48 were quieter than the day, but Ethan had come to realize that was when the truest parts of people revealed themselves. Under fluorescent lights, stripped of the rush and noise, the rhythm of the store slowed into something almost human. That was when he began to notice her. Lisa. She worked Register 3, always took the closing shift, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. She was slender, with pale skin and long blonde hair that she kept tied back in a loose ponytail. But what struck Ethan wasn't her appearance, it was her eyes. There was something in them he couldn't name. Not sadness exactly, but a certain stillness, like someone who had learned to live with something they never quite healed from. She was always kind to customers, but not in a performative way. It was quiet kindness, real. When an elderly man came through her line short $2 for groceries, she pulled the change from her own pocket without hesitation and told him not to worry about it. When a young mother's toddler threw a tantrum and knocked over a display, Lisa calmly knelt down to help clean up while offering a gentle word to soothe the panicked woman. She took shifts no one else wanted. She clocked out late. Ethan once watched her mop up a coffee spill that wasn't even in her department, simply because no one else had noticed. She never complained. She never expected praise. She just did what needed to be done. And yet, she never smiled with her whole face. Ethan watched her from afar, not in a way that felt intrusive, but observant. Every time he saw her interact with a customer, he found himself trying to read between her gestures. The way she gripped the counter a second longer after a particularly rude exchange. The way she turned away quickly after a polite laugh, as if afraid the mask might slip. One evening, he saw her walking alone toward the break room at the end of her shift. Her shoulders were tense. She glanced over her shoulder once, then disappeared behind the swinging door. That was the first time he wondered what burden she was carrying. He couldn't stop thinking about her. It wasn't romantic, at least not yet, but it was something deeper. Something like recognition. He saw in her the quiet strength of someone who endured, who kept going not because they had the energy, but because they had no other choice. Ethan had spent the past week pushing carts, restocking shelves, and cleaning up broken jars. His body ached in places he had forgotten could ache, but nothing unsettled him like the presence of this girl who wore her pain like a second skin. One night, as he walked past her register during closing, he heard a customer bark at her for scanning an item twice. She apologized immediately, voided the duplicate, and handed the woman her receipt with steady hands. As the customer walked away, Ethan caught a glimpse of Lisa's face. She was still smiling, but her eyes looked like they were somewhere else entirely. That was when it hit him. Whatever pain she was holding, it was old, worn in, like a coat she had grown used to wearing. Why does she stay here? Ethan wondered later that night as he sat alone in the break room. Why does a girl like her choose this life? Is it really a choice at all? He thought of his mother, of how she had smiled for him even when her world was falling apart, of how she had said that some people give more than they should because they're afraid no one else will. He looked toward the door where Lisa had walked through earlier and thought, she's not just another employee. There's something else, something I need to understand. And from that moment on, Ethan began to watch more carefully, not from suspicion, but from a place of quiet reverence. There was more to Lisa than met the eye, and he could feel it in his bones. Whatever it was going to change everything. The break room door creaked as Ethan pushed it open, expecting silence. But the moment he stepped inside, he stopped. There she was again, Lisa sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows resting on her knees, a worn photograph clutched tightly in her hands. Her back was slightly hunched, her posture stiff, as though she were trying to hold herself together by sheer will. Her eyes didn't meet his, but she didn't tell him to leave either. "I'm sorry," Ethan said softly, standing near the door. "I didn't mean to intrude." Lisa gave the faintest shake of her head. Her fingers trembled as they tightened around the edges of the photo. "It's fine, I just needed a moment." Ethan moved quietly to the bench across from her and sat without a word. He didn't want to break whatever fragile balance was keeping her from falling apart. Lisa stared down at the photo, not really seeing it. Her voice, when it came, was low and brittle. "I've been messing up at the register. I entered the wrong price twice today, forgot to bag a woman's produce. She yelled at me in front of the whole line, said I was useless." Ethan stayed quiet. "I couldn't even look her in the eye," Lisa continued. "I wanted to apologize, but the words just wouldn't come out. My head's somewhere else." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked away, her jaw clenched, like she was trying to trap the emotions crawling up her throat. "I asked for one more day off," she said after a pause, "just one. But the manager said if I miss 2 days in 1 month, they'll cut me from the schedule." Ethan felt the anger rise in his chest, but he swallowed it. This wasn't about him. "I can't afford to lose this job," Lisa said, voice cracking. "My little brother, he's only 6. He needs food, clothes, rent over his head. I'm all he has now." She paused, and her breath hitched. "He keeps asking about her," she whispered. "Every night. How's Mom today? Did she get my picture? Is she still tired?" Her hands shook harder now, and she brought them to her face, shielding her expression as her shoulders hunched inward. "I can't tell him," she said through her hands. "I can't be the one to say it. He draws her pictures every week. I mail them to nowhere and pretend she's still too weak to reply. Every night I lie, and every morning I cry before he wakes up." Ethan's chest tightened. There were no words for this, no comfort big enough to wrap around the weight she carried. "I'm scared," Lisa whispered, finally lowering her hands. "I'm scared that when he finds out, he'll stop smiling, that I'll lose the last piece of her I have left." Ethan watched her, the silence in the room now dense, aching. She looked at him, eyes rimmed red but dry. "I feel like I'm breaking, but I don't have time to break." He nodded slowly, his voice barely audible. You shouldn't have to carry this alone. Lisa gave a hollow laugh. But I do. That's the thing. No one else is going to step in. If I fall apart, everything falls apart with me. She leaned back against the couch, the photograph now resting on her lap. Ethan glanced at it, 3 smiling faces, one of them a boy with bright eyes and gap-toothed grin. That's him? Ethan asked gently. She nodded. Tommy. He doesn't even know what grief is yet. And I'm doing everything I can to keep it that way for just a little longer. They sat in silence for a moment. The humming vending machine, the ticking clock, even the distant buzz of the store outside, all of it faded into the background. Ethan wanted to promise her something, anything, that she'd be okay, that things would get better. But all he could do was sit beside her and feel the gravity of her world pressing in. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her uniform and stood up slowly. I should get back, she said, voice low but steady. Ethan stood too. If you ever need anything, just say the word. Lisa didn't answer right away. Then, almost imperceptibly, she gave a small nod and walked out, the photo still in her hand. And Ethan, left behind in the quiet, knew something had shifted. He had seen pain before, but not like this. He had just stepped into Lisa's darkness and found it filled with a light so fierce it made his chest ache. It was a slow night at the store. The aisles stood mostly empty, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the quiet. Ethan, finishing his shift, wiped down a shelf in frozen foods when he noticed Lisa in the adjacent aisle, kneeling by the soup cans, methodically organizing with mechanical focus. Her movements were sharp, precise, but lacked any energy. Her eyes stared forward, unfocused. He hesitated, then approached. Need a hand? Lisa glanced up, startled, then managed a small, tired smile. I'm good, just keeping busy. Ethan crouched beside her and began stacking cans. Sometimes that helps. Silence followed, but not uncomfortable. Then Lisa spoke, voice soft. You ever meet someone? Just once, but they changed everything? He looked at her, surprised. Yeah, I think I have. Lisa nodded. My mom used to say that. There was someone like that for her. Ethan paused. Who? She was driving late, 10 years ago. It was raining hard. Her car spun off the road into a ditch. She was trapped, scared. Lisa's voice dropped, touched with something reverent. He said a young man stopped, mid-20s maybe. He pulled her out, drove her to the hospital, stayed the whole time. Argued with the nurses to get her seen faster. Ethan's breath caught. She never got his full name. He told her he was Jonathan Hale. The name rang like a bell in Ethan's mind, and for a moment everything froze. Jonathan Hale. It was his name before he changed it legally, just before founding the company. At 25, he'd wanted a clean start. He'd taken his middle name, left Jonathan behind, and became Ethan Hale. He remembered that night. The pouring rain, the car overturned in a ditch, a woman injured, frightened. He'd smashed a window, carried her out, and driven her to the nearest hospital. Waited until she was admitted. She had thanked him. He had nodded, said it was nothing, and walked away. Now here he was, 10 years later, listening to Lisa tell the story. She always called him her angel, Lisa said. Said he didn't just save her body. He reminded her that good people still exist, that kindness mattered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Its edges were worn. She wrote this, Lisa said. She never sent it. She kept it by her bed. She handed it to Ethan. He took it with careful fingers, unfolding it slowly. To the young man who pulled me from the wreckage. You may never know what you did for me that night, but you didn't just save my body. You saved my belief in people, in decency, in good. If my daughter ever meets you again, I hope she sees what I saw, a heart that didn't hesitate. If I'm gone by then, please know, you gave me more than one night of life. You gave me 10 more years with my children. Thank you. Elaine Carter? Elaine, that was her name. Ethan's throat tightened. He looked at Lisa, the realization settling in with full weight. She was the girl from that night. 14 years old, then. He remembered her faintly, waiting in a hallway with a coloring book, blonde ponytail, wide eyes full of worry. Now here she was, grown, hurting, strong, and he had been beside her for weeks without knowing. She had no idea the man in the story was sitting in front of her. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked, noticing the shift in his expression. Ethan nodded slowly, folding the letter with trembling hands and offering it back. "Yeah, that's a powerful letter." Lisa gave a soft smile. She believed people like him were rare, people who did good and didn't want anything back. Ethan took a breath, forcing himself to stay steady. "Sounds like he left a mark." Lisa's eyes grew misty. "He did?" She tucked the letter away and stood, brushing off her pants. Ethan remained still, his thoughts spinning. Was it really her? Was this girl, this woman, the same child who once drew him an angel with crayon wings and thanked him for saving her mother? And if so, what did he do now that fate had brought them together again? Ethan sat on the floor of his apartment late that night, surrounded by boxes he hadn't opened in years. The dim lamplight cast long shadows across the worn cardboard and stacks of old notebooks, receipts, and mementos from a different life. His hands moved slowly, methodically, as if they were afraid to find what they were searching for. The letter Lisa had shown him still echoed in his mind. Jonathan Hale, her mother's name, Elaine, the night of the accident. It all lined up too perfectly. He needed to know for sure. Digging through one of the final boxes, Ethan found it, a weathered leather journal, the edges frayed, the spine nearly torn. It was the journal he had kept in his 20s, back when he still wrote down thoughts instead of typing them into a phone. He flipped through the pages, notes about early business ideas, reminders, short entries about long nights, and dreams he barely remembered anymore. Then he found it. Tucked between 2 pages, pressed carefully between paper and leather, was a small drawing. The paper was faded now, its edges curled with time, but the image was unmistakable, a childish crayon sketch of a smiling angel with big wings and a gold halo, and at the bottom, written in large, uneven letters, "Thank you, handsome man, for saving my mom, Lisa." Ethan froze. His breath caught in his chest as he traced the lines with his fingertips. The angel had brown hair and a blue shirt, just like he had worn that night. The wings were lopsided, the face crudely drawn, but the message was clear. He remembered now, it was just a few days after the accident. He had gone back to check on Elaine, to make sure she was recovering. She had invited him into their modest home, a small rental on a quiet street. The furniture was old, the kitchen smelled like warm bread, and the walls were lined with photographs of a life built with love. Lisa had been there, maybe 14, a thin girl with bright blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail and eyes too wide for her face. She had peeked around the corner, shyly at first, then run up to him, holding the drawing with both hands. "I made this for you," she'd said, smiling. "You're like a real-life angel." He had laughed awkwardly, flattered but unsure how to respond. He took the drawing, thanked her, and promised to keep it. And he had. Until tonight he had forgotten. Now, 10 years later, the same girl, now a young woman, was back in his life, broken but brave, carrying the weight of a world that had never gone easy on her. He stared at the drawing, a lump rising in his throat. Emotions surged through him, disbelief, sorrow, awe. The kind of awe that comes when the universe circles back and places someone you once knew into your path again. Just when you're finally able to understand why, tears welled in his eyes. She had called him a guardian angel, but the truth was he had only been there for a moment. A passing light in one of the darkest nights of her mother's life. Yet somehow that moment had mattered. It had lived on. In Lisa, in her mother, in that letter she had never sent, and now she was in pain, alone, carrying not only her grief, but the responsibility of raising her younger brother, working herself into exhaustion just to survive. And still she had kept the gentleness her mother had loved, the decency, the strength. Ethan wiped his face with the sleeve of his shirt, trying to steady his breath. "She remembered me," he whispered. "All this time. But she didn't know yet. She didn't know the man stocking shelves next to her, who had listened quietly as she cried, was the same one from that night. The man she had once drawn with wings and called Angel. The realization was overwhelming. He sat in silence, the drawing in his lap, heart aching in a way he hadn't felt in years. The past and present had collided, and in the middle stood Lisa, not just a girl with a sad smile. She was a piece of a promise he had made long ago, a symbol of something he thought he had lost in the noise of boardrooms and deadlines. He folded the drawing carefully and pressed it back between the journal's pages. But not to forget it this time. No, now it was a reminder, a guide. He looked out the window into the quiet night and whispered to the stars, "She gave me this once. Maybe now it's my turn to give something back." And with that, Ethan knew he would not walk away. Not this time. "Everything is written precisely to the tone and structure you've set." The morning air was cool as Ethan stood outside the store, sipping his coffee, watching delivery trucks unload their cargo. To anyone passing by, he was just another early shift worker waiting to clock in. But inside, his mind was racing. He had a plan, a quiet one, a gentle one. A plan born not of duty, but of something far more personal. That week, Ethan set up a private support pipeline through the nonprofit he had founded years ago in his mother's name, still active, but now under the radar. Under the alias "From a Friend of Your Mother," he began sending weekly care packages to Lisa's apartment. Each box was carefully assembled: healthy groceries, toiletries, small toys, and school supplies for her little brother, and sometimes, tucked between the items, a handwritten note on unbranded stationery. "You're not alone. Keep going." Or, "Your strength is seen even when you feel invisible." He knew she would be suspicious at first, but he also knew she needed to believe in grace again, in invisible kindness, just like her mother once had. Then came the song. One night in the break room, Ethan had overheard Lisa humming softly as she folded receipts, just a few faint notes, almost lost in the hum of the vending machine. But he recognized it. It was the same melody her mother had hummed years ago in that hospital room. A lullaby passed down. He recorded it discreetly on his phone and later sent it to a composer friend, along with a simple request. "Can you make this into something she'll never forget?" The final piece arrived a week later. A delicate acoustic version of the tune, stitched gently with Lisa's own humming, preserved like a memory beneath piano chords and strings. Ethan had it placed inside a small wooden music box. He wrapped it carefully, added a note, "For nights when silence is too loud, she's still with you," and left it at her door with no sender. But there was one final piece of the puzzle, one he had been holding onto for 10 years, the drawing. He had kept it since the day she handed it to him, a crayon sketch of an angel, smiling under a golden halo. The wings were uneven, the lines unsteady, but it had been filled with so much childlike warmth, so much belief. "Thank you, handsome man, for saving my mom, Lisa." He took it to a framing shop downtown, asked for museum glass, no embellishments, just preservation. At the bottom of the frame, he added a single line in gold script: "Kept, always." When it was ready, he wrapped it in soft paper and had it delivered to the store, addressed only to Lisa, staff locker. No sender, no message. He waited in the break room as the shift manager handed her the package. Ethan pretended to be focused on a clipboard while watching her from the corner of his eye. Lisa peeled away the paper slowly, brow furrowed. Then, suddenly, she froze. The drawing stared back at her. Her own handwriting, 10 years, faded, her own childlike lettering. Her breath caught in her throat. She sat down on the couch slowly, clutching the frame. Her fingers trembled as she traced the glass. Her lips parted, but no words came. Then finally, her voice cracked through the silence. Who would keep this for 10 years?" she whispered. Ethan didn't move. He let the moment breathe. Lisa held the frame to her chest like something sacred, tears spilling freely now, unguarded. The drawing had returned to her not just as paper and ink, but as proof. Proof that someone, somewhere, had remembered her mother. Remembered her. She whispered again, voice breaking. How could anyone hold on to this for so long? The music box lay unopened beside her. The care packages still came each week. But nothing moved her like this, because this was a part of her she thought had disappeared into time. And Ethan, standing quietly just a few feet away, knew he had given her something no amount of money ever could. Memory, validation, love. Silent, unseen, but real. The conference room at Store 48 buzzed with quiet confusion. No one knew why every employee, from cashiers to janitors, had been called in after their shift. Chairs lined the floor, coffee and snacks set up. Lisa sat near the back, the music box she'd received the day before still in her bag. Then the manager stepped aside and introduced a special guest from corporate. Heads turned. Ethan walked up front. But this time, he wasn't in uniform. He wore a blazer, jeans, no clipboard. He picked up the mic and scanned the room. "Hi," he began. "Most of you know me as Ethan J., the guy in the stockroom who can't wrap a pallet straight." Laughter stirred. He smiled. "But that's not my full name. I'm Ethan Hale. I founded Ethan Mart 10 years ago." Gasps echoed. Lisa froze, breath caught in her throat. "I came undercover to see if this company still had the heart it started with," he said, "and I found it. In a cashier named Lisa." All eyes turned. Lisa blinked, stunned. "I met her long before I knew her name," Ethan continued. "Years ago, I helped a woman in a car accident. She had kids. One gave me a drawing of an angel. That girl is here today." Lisa's hands rose to her face. "Lisa," he said gently, "you reminded me why this matters. That strength isn't loud. Sometimes it just shows up, day after day, and keeps going." She stood slowly, trembling. Ethan's voice steadied. "From today, we're changing things. This company will prioritize people, better benefits, mental health support, and new programs to help single parents and the unhoused. We're rebuilding what matters." Applause filled the room. Lisa stood still, overwhelmed. Ethan stepped down and walked to her. He reached for her hand. "I met you when you were 14. You called me a guardian angel, but really, you saved me." Tears streamed down Lisa's cheeks. "I've loved you quietly," he said. "Not for who you wanted to be, but for who you are. For the way you kept believing in good when life gave you every reason not to." He exhaled. "I love you, Lisa. Not because you need saving, but because you reminded me how to live." A hush settled. Lisa didn't answer with words. She stepped forward and embraced him, strong and sure. Then a whisper, "Yes, I know." They didn't need fine restaurants or luxury trips. That weekend they strolled her neighborhood, eating tacos from food trucks, laughing beneath dim street lamps. Lisa felt free again, like her soul had room to breathe. Ethan didn't check his phone. He didn't rush. He just held her hand like it meant something. One afternoon, Lisa brought him and her little brother Tommy to the cemetery. They laid white daisies, her mom's favorite, on the grave. Tommy knelt and placed a drawing beside the headstone. Ethan knelt too, laying a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I didn't know your mom like you did," he said softly. "But I think she'd be proud of both of you." Tommy looked up. "Do you think she knows?" Ethan nodded. "She knows." Then he whispered to the grave, "I promise, I'll take care of them, as long as I live." Lisa stood quietly behind them, eyes shining. When Ethan rose, he reached for her hand. Together the three stood in the soft breeze, the flowers swaying. No more words needed, just the quiet, beautiful truth. They had found their way back to the heart, and so what began with a tear in a break room ended in a promise beneath the sky, a promise born not from grand gestures, but from small moments of truth, kindness, and quiet love. Ethan found his purpose again. Lisa found the strength to lean on someone. And Tommy found someone who would never walk away. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the quiet heroes around us, or made you believe once more in the power of compassion, please consider subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. Here, we don't just tell stories. We tell the ones that stay with you. Subscribe, like, and share to keep these stories of hope alive. Until next time, may your heart be kind and your soul stirred.